Are you sure she took enough? Relax. By tomorrow morning, everything will belong to us. I didn't move. I didn't breathe any differently. I simply listened. At that moment, I understood something terrifying. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan. A plan that had been building for years. Slowly, I reached for my phone beside the bed. My battery sat at 34%. I opened my messages and typed 6 words to my attorney. Execute the plan now. Then I put the phone down and stared at the ceiling. But to understand how I ended up in that hospital room, we need to go back. I grew up in Wake County, North Carolina. My mother raised me alone while working multiple jobs. We never had much money, but she taught me 2 lessons that shaped my entire life. Nothing comes for free. And never hand your future to someone else. Those lessons stayed with me. I earned a scholarship, graduated near the top of my class, and built a successful career in healthcare. Later, I founded my own company, Bennett Home Care. It started with a folding table in my kitchen, 1 laptop, and a phone that never stopped ringing. 5 years later, I had more than 20 employees helping patients across several counties. I loved my work. I loved helping people. That's where Ethan Carter entered my life. I met him at a healthcare fundraiser. He was quiet, polite, and incredibly attentive. Unlike most people, he didn't lose interest when I talked about business. Instead, he listened. He asked smart questions. Then he introduced me to his family. His mother, Margaret Carter, welcomed me with open arms. She hugged me and said, "Claire, you're exactly what this family has been missing." At the time, I believed her. The house was beautiful. The dinner table was elegant. Everything looked perfect. But now, when I replay that night, I realize she wasn't welcoming me. His younger sister, Olivia, smiled constantly, but there was something behind her eyes that unsettled me. She wasn't curious. She was calculating. Ethan, meanwhile, checked his mother's messages several times during dinner. Every single time she texted, he answered immediately. I noticed it. I simply didn't understand what it meant yet. On our drive home, Ethan smiled. "My mom already loves you." I smiled back. I had no idea that love wasn't what she was offering. It was ownership. We married a year later. For a while, everything seemed normal. Until 6 months after our wedding. Margaret invited me to lunch at her favorite restaurant. She folded her hands and smiled. "Claire, we should talk about your business." I nodded politely. Our family has a trust. We handle investments, real estate, taxes. It would make sense to move Bennett Home Care into the family structure. Like she was offering me dessert. I smiled politely. "No, thank you." Her expression barely changed. But something behind her eyes hardened. That evening, Ethan brought it up again. "Mom's only trying to help. I'm keeping my company separate." He sighed. "Don't make this weird." That sentence stayed with me. Because saying no to another person's access to your money is never weird. But for this family, apparently, it was. That was the first moment I felt it. An invisible cord connecting Ethan and his mother. Every time I pushed back, he leaned toward her. I ignored it. I told myself marriage was an adjustment. I told myself families were complicated. I told myself everything would improve. I was wrong. Because while I was busy building my future, they were quietly building a plan to take it away. And the first sign appeared in our bank account. One Tuesday night, while reviewing finances, I noticed something missing. $12,000. Gone. Transferred into an account I didn't recognize. When I asked Ethan about it, his answer was immediate. Mom needed it temporarily. I stared at him. Our emergency savings? He shrugged. She'll pay it back. That's when a strange feeling settled into my chest. Not fear. Not anger. Something worse. Doubt. Because for the very first time since meeting him, I wasn't asking myself if his family was manipulating him. I was asking a much more dangerous question. What if Ethan was helping them all along? I didn't confront Ethan immediately. Years of working in emergency medicine had taught me something important. People often reveal more when they think you trust them. So I stayed quiet. I watched. And once I started paying attention, the cracks became impossible to ignore. 2 weeks after the missing $12,000, another $5,000 disappeared from our joint account. No discussion. No warning. No permission. I placed the bank statement in front of Ethan after dinner. He barely looked at it. Mom had another deadline, he said. I folded my hands. You didn't think to ask me first? He shrugged. I didn't want to bother you. That answer irritated me more than the missing money itself. As if respecting my opinion was somehow inconvenient. As if my hard work existed for everyone else's benefit. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I opened a new bank account. I quietly redirected my business income there. I left enough money in our joint account to pay household expenses and nothing more. 3 weeks passed before he noticed. He stood in the kitchen one evening holding his phone. Why did you move the money? I looked up from my laptop. Because I work 60 hours a week for it. He stared at me. I stared back. The silence between us felt different now. Colder. He didn't argue. He simply walked away. That was when I realized something unsettling. Whenever his mother's plans failed, Ethan never defended me. He never defended himself either. He simply retreated. As though he'd spent his entire life obeying her. It was easier. Bennett Home Care was expanding rapidly. A regional hospital wanted us to manage post-discharge care for multiple counties. It was the biggest contract I'd ever received. I hired 3 nurses. Purchased another company vehicle. Worked late nearly every night. It couldn't. One evening, I missed Ethan's birthday dinner. Margaret answered his phone when I called. Oh, we understand, sweetheart. Business comes first for some people. She said it gently. But her words carried a sharp edge. When I arrived home, Ethan was asleep on the couch. I stood there for a long time. I wanted to wake him up. I wanted to ask him if he could still see what his mother was doing. But exhaustion won. I covered him with a blanket and went upstairs. I didn't realize it then, but I wasn't solving problems anymore. I was avoiding them. Then something happened that changed everything. A certified letter arrived at our house. Property taxes. $340,000 overdue. I sat down with Ethan. How bad is this? He hesitated. Then he finally told me the truth. Margaret's entire real estate empire was collapsing. Vacant buildings. Outstanding loans. Years of hidden debt. Nearly $900,000 in financial exposure. The image she projected to the world was a lie. She wasn't wealthy anymore. She was desperate. That evening, my phone rang. Margaret. Her voice was as warm as ever. Claire, I know Ethan explained the situation. We're family. Family shares burdens. I remained quiet. She continued. I'm only asking for a temporary transfer from your business accounts. There it was. The real reason she'd welcomed me years ago. She didn't want a daughter-in-law. She wanted an asset. No, I said. The silence on the line stretched. Then she answered. I understand. We'll find another way. She said it softly. But something about her tone sent chills through my body. Because it didn't sound like acceptance. It sounded like a promise. Everyone smiled. Everyone laughed. Everyone performed. Then I overheard Olivia speaking on the phone inside the house. Claire acts like she's the only person who works. I stayed hidden. Olivia sighed. Mom never stops comparing me to her. Suddenly, everything made sense. Margaret wasn't just controlling people. She was manipulating everyone against each other. She praised me to Olivia. She praised Olivia to Ethan. She kept everyone competing for approval. It was brilliant. And dangerous. Control disguised as love. I drove home that night in complete silence. Ethan sat beside me scrolling through his phone. For the first time in our marriage, he felt like a stranger. That night, I opened every financial document in our house. Every account. Every agreement. Every signature. Then my stomach dropped. My business succession plan. If I ever became incapacitated, Ethan would immediately take over my company operations. I stared at the screen. Years ago, it had seemed harmless. Now it felt like an unlocked front door. I checked my healthcare documents next. My chest tightened. Ethan had broad authority over my finances if something happened to me. Suddenly, every strange event connected together. The money. The pressure. The family trust. Their desperation. None of this was random. I sat at my computer long after midnight. Ethan slept peacefully beside me. I opened a blank document and started making notes. Because for the first time, my instincts weren't whispering anymore. Something was coming. Something much bigger than missing money. And deep down, I already knew one terrifying truth. Margaret Carter had stopped asking for my life and started planning how to take it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my desk while Ethan slept peacefully beside me, reading every legal document I had ever signed. The healthcare power of attorney. The business succession plan. The financial authorizations. All of them had one thing in common. Trust. Every document had been created during a time when I believed my husband would always protect me. Now that trust felt dangerous. By sunrise, I had made a decision. I needed professional help. Not Ethan's attorney. Not anyone connected to the Carter family. My own attorney. Someone completely independent. But before I did that, another piece of the puzzle arrived. It happened by accident. I was searching for a phone charger inside Ethan's work bag. Instead, my fingers touched a manila folder. I almost ignored it. Then something told me to open it. My heart immediately skipped a beat. There it was. A healthcare power of attorney. My name sat at the top of the page. Ethan Carter was listed as my healthcare agent with extensive financial authority. I stared at the document. I had never seen it before. I had never signed it. Yet my signature was sitting at the bottom. At first glance, it looked convincing. But I knew my own handwriting. This wasn't mine. I carefully photographed every page. The signatures. The dates. The notary seal. Then I returned everything exactly as I'd found it. That night, I climbed into bed beside Ethan. He slept soundly. His breathing was slow and steady. I stared at the ceiling. The man beside me had a forged document capable of taking control of my entire life. And he was sleeping peacefully. The next morning, I called my old friend Hannah Brooks. We had worked together years ago. She was a pharmacist, brilliant and direct. The type of person who never sugarcoated anything. We met for coffee. She looked uneasy. "Claire, I need to ask you something." I sat down. "What happened?" She leaned forward. "Someone called the pharmacy last week pretending to be your doctor's office." My stomach tightened. "What did they ask for?" "Your medications. Your allergies. And whether you've ever received psychiatric treatment." I froze. "Psychiatric treatment?" She nodded. "Or any history of cognitive impairment." A cold wave ran through my body. They weren't just trying to steal my money. They were building a case. A fake one. I told Hannah everything. The forged documents. The suspicious illnesses. The missing money. The family pressure. When I finished, she didn't hesitate. Then she said something else. "If you suspect someone is poisoning you, get baseline blood work done while you're healthy." I blinked. "Why?" "So you'll have something to compare against later." I drove home in silence. That sentence echoed in my head. Compare against later. As if another incident was inevitable. Maybe it was. The next morning, I called the State Bar Referral Service and found an independent attorney. Victoria Reed. Her office was simple and professional. No luxury furniture. No expensive paintings. No distractions. She listened to my entire story without interrupting. 45 minutes passed. Then she put her pen down. "You have a forgery." She wrote another note. "You have a pattern of financial manipulation." Another note. "You have unauthorized access attempts involving your medical records." She looked directly at me. "And Claire, you have a very small window before they escalate." My heart pounded. Escalate to what? She folded her hands. To taking everything. Then she began outlining a plan. First, we remove Ethan from every trust and succession document. I nodded. Second, I become your emergency trustee if something happens to you. Another note. Third, we challenge that forged document before anyone can use it. Then she paused. And fourth, we build a dead man switch. I frowned. What is that? If you fail to check in with me at our agreed time, I automatically activate several legal actions. Police reports. Asset freezes. Divorce filings. I sat there absorbing the information. For months, I'd felt powerless. Suddenly, I didn't. Not because the danger was gone, but because I finally had a strategy. I signed every document that afternoon. I drove home feeling strangely calm. Not safe. Prepared. And sometimes those two feelings are close enough. That evening, Ethan kissed my cheek when I walked inside. How was your day? I smiled. It was productive. He smiled back. He had absolutely no idea that his access to my entire life had just been erased. And that was exactly how I wanted it. Because if Margaret Carter was planning something bigger, I intended to be ready. What I didn't know yet was that their plan was already entering its final stage. And the next clue would prove that they weren't just trying to steal my future anymore. They were preparing to convince the world that I had lost my mind. The next clue arrived when Ethan made a mistake. For years, he had been careful. Too careful. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday evening. His laptop sat open on the kitchen counter while he showered upstairs. Normally, I never touched his devices. But then a notification appeared. An email. The subject line instantly caught my attention. Emergency conservatorship timeline. My entire body went still. I opened it. The sender was Margaret Carter. Then I started reading. Step 1. After Claire is admitted to the hospital, Ethan presents healthcare power of attorney. Step 2. File for emergency conservatorship citing medical incapacitation. Step 3. Transfer business and personal assets. Step 4. Take operational control of Bennett Home Care. I read every line twice. There it was. Their entire plan. Written down. Organized. Detailed. Cold. I took screenshots and immediately emailed them to Victoria. Then I carefully returned the laptop to its exact position. A few minutes later, Ethan came downstairs. He smiled. I smiled back. Something inside me had changed. The fear was disappearing. And in its place was clarity. They were no longer my family. They were suspects. Victoria called within the hour. This changes everything. What do we do? Accelerate. That single word became our strategy. Over the next several weeks, we moved quickly. Ethan lost every path to my company. Every password changed. Every account changed. Every security question changed. At home, however, nothing changed. At least not visibly. I still cooked dinner. I still watched television with Ethan. I still answered Margaret's weekly phone calls. I still attended family gatherings. I smiled. I laughed. I performed. But inside, I was documenting everything. One evening, Victoria called. When the next family dinner happens, don't skip it. I blinked. Why? They've already built a timeline. If you avoid this opportunity, they'll simply choose another date. She paused. It's better to confront danger when you're prepared. I understood immediately. The dinner was coming. I could feel it. A few days later, I visited my doctor. I requested comprehensive blood work. Liver function. Kidney function. Metabolic panels. Heavy metal screenings. Everything. She raised an eyebrow. Any reason? I smiled politely. I just want a baseline. The results came back normal. Perfectly normal. I printed every page and gave copies to Victoria. She nodded. Exactly. That evening, I sat inside my car in the hospital parking lot after work. And for the first time in months, I cried. Not because I was angry. Because I was grieving. I was preparing legal cases against my own family. Against my husband. Every document I signed was another step away from the life I thought I had. Every step hurt. But every step was necessary. 2 days later, Margaret called. My stomach tightened. Here it was. The date they'd been waiting for. I'll be there. We're making something special. That evening, Olivia sent a message. Can't wait for Saturday. Red Heart has champagne glasses. I stared at it. 3 people pretending to celebrate while planning my destruction. The next morning, I called Victoria. This is the dinner. She paused. If you don't contact me by 11 tonight, I activate everything. I nodded despite knowing she couldn't see me. Understood. Then she said something important. Do not panic. Follow the protocol. Protocol. That word comforted me. Medical professionals survive chaos because they trust protocols. And now my life depended on one. Friday night, I prepared everything. Phone fully charged. Portable charger. Sealed water bottle. Emergency contacts. Victoria. Hannah. Police non-emergency line. Then I called Hannah. If I end up at the hospital tomorrow night, I need you to request a full toxicology panel. She sighed. Claire, are you sure about this? If I don't go, they'll simply try again. She was quiet for a moment. Then she answered. Okay. I'll have my phone beside me all night. Saturday morning arrived. I wasn't looking at a victim anymore. I was looking at someone about to walk directly into a trap. On purpose. Because this time, the trap wasn't for me. It was for them. At 6:45 that evening, I pulled into the Carter family's driveway. The lights were glowing. The front door was already open. Margaret stood there smiling. Arms wide. Waiting for me. And for the first time since meeting her, I knew exactly who she really was. What I didn't know was what she had already put inside the dessert waiting on the table. I walked into the Carter house at exactly 6:45 p.m. Everything looked perfect. The dining room glowed under warm lights. Candles flickered in the center of the table. White napkins were folded neatly beside expensive china. It looked beautiful. Too beautiful. Margaret stood in the doorway wearing a navy dress and pearl earrings. Claire, sweetheart. She hugged me. The embrace lasted 1 second too long. Behind her, Olivia stood beside the kitchen island holding a glass of wine. Happy anniversary. Ethan was near the window. He smiled when he saw me. "You look beautiful." His words sounded normal. His eyes didn't. There was nervousness hiding underneath. I held up my sealed water bottle when Margaret reached for the wine. "Water for me tonight." A tiny flicker crossed her face. Gone in an instant. "Of course, dear." Dinner began. Mashed potatoes. Fresh green beans. Margaret told old family stories while Olivia laughed at all the right moments. Ethan barely touched his food. That alone told me something was wrong. Normally, he loved Margaret's cooking. Tonight, he was pushing food around his plate. I quietly sent Victoria a text message under the table. "Arrived. Everyone is here." Dinner started. That was our signal. She was monitoring everything. The evening continued. Warm. Pleasant. Artificial. Every smile felt rehearsed. Every laugh felt staged. Then Margaret disappeared into the kitchen. When she returned, she carried a glass dish. Tiramisu. She placed it directly in front of me. My stomach tightened. I had mentioned liking tiramisu once. 2 years ago. She remembered. Not because she cared. Because she stored information. She collected details. Like a hunter studies habits. Olivia stood first. A toast. She smiled. To family. To love. To sharing everything that matters. The words almost made me laugh. Sharing everything. That phrase again. Olivia raised hers. I picked up my fork. First bite. Sweet. Rich. Espresso. Second bite. There it was. A strange bitterness. Subtle. Chemical. I looked up. Not the way someone watches a guest enjoy dessert. The way someone watches a clock. I understood immediately. This was it. The moment they'd been preparing for. I took another bite. Then another. Get baseline blood work. Don't back out. I needed enough evidence. Enough to become undeniable. I finished half the serving and put my fork down. Margaret, this is wonderful. She smiled. For 1 second, I saw something strange in her eyes. Not guilt. Not fear. Pity. Fast. A wave of nausea rose through my body. My hands went cold. The room tilted slightly. My heart began pounding. Margaret spoke immediately. "Oh dear, Claire, you look pale." Too fast. Too prepared. Too observant. I stood slowly. "Excuse me." I walked to the bathroom and locked the door. My hands trembled. She replied instantly. "Copy. I'm ready." I splashed water on my face. The woman staring back at me looked exhausted. I walked back to the dining room. Slowly. Deliberately. Ethan stood immediately. "I'll call Mom's doctor." My voice was sharp enough to surprise everyone. Margaret froze for half a second. Then smiled again. "Of course." I grabbed my purse. My water bottle. My phone. Margaret opened the front door for me. She wanted me at the hospital. That was always part of her plan. She just didn't realize it was part of mine too. The drive felt endless. My stomach churned. My heart raced. Ethan gripped the steering wheel tightly. He didn't say much. Neither did I. At the emergency room, nurses moved quickly. 4 lines. Blood drawers. Tests. Everything happened fast. I was fading in and out. Then I heard Margaret arrive. Already taking control. She needs a private room. She spoke with confidence. The hospital accommodated her request. VIP room. Private space. Everything she wanted. Everything she thought she needed. Because Margaret Carter believed privacy would help her win. She had no idea she had just placed me inside the most sophisticated evidence collection room imaginable. Security cameras. Electronic records. Blood samples. Timestamps. Witnesses. Every move documented. I drifted in and out of consciousness. Then suddenly, I woke up. 2:07 a.m. The hallway lights spilled into my room. And outside the door, Margaret and Olivia were whispering. The words I heard next would destroy their entire world. By tomorrow morning, everything will belong to us. I stayed perfectly still. Every instinct inside me wanted to sit up and confront them. But I didn't. Years in healthcare had taught me one thing. Information is most valuable when people don't know you're listening. Margaret whispered first. Olivia answered confidently. She ate half the dessert. By tomorrow morning, everything will belong to us. My chest tightened. Then Margaret continued. Olivia replied. The documents are already in his bag. Margaret lowered her voice even further. Then she said something that erased every remaining doubt. She'll be too sedated to fight back. Silence returned. I counted to 60. Then I reached for my purse. My phone lit up. Battery 34%. I opened my messages. 6 words. Execute the plan now. Victoria responded 90 seconds later. For the first time in months, I felt calm. Not because the danger had passed. I immediately called Hannah. She answered on the second ring. Claire? I'm at Raleigh Presbyterian. VIP room. 3rd floor. I'm calling now. I need a full toxicology panel ordered immediately. Understood. She didn't ask questions. She simply acted. That's why I trusted her. Next, I reached for my admission paperwork. I scanned every page. Then I saw it. Under Healthcare Decision Maker. Ethan Carter, Healthcare Power of Attorney. I photographed it immediately and sent it to Victoria. Her reply arrived moments later. The forgery challenge is already active. The hospital legal department is being notified now. I exhaled slowly. Margaret had spent years building her plan. Victoria had dismantled it in hours. I leaned back against the pillow. The irony almost made me smile. Margaret chose this private room because she wanted control. Instead, she'd created a perfect evidence chamber. Electronic records. Security footage. Timestamps. Blood samples. Everything documented. Everything traceable. At 7:45 a.m., Victoria arrived. Grey blazer. Black portfolio. Calm expression. She looked exactly the way I needed her to look. Prepared. We barely spoke. We didn't need to. Everything had already been set into motion. At 8:10 a.m., the door opened. Margaret entered carrying flowers. Olivia followed. Ethan walked in last. Margaret smiled immediately. "Oh, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" Then she noticed Victoria. Her smile disappeared. "Who is this?" I answered calmly. The room instantly changed. Margaret's face stiffened. Olivia took half a step backward. Ethan's hands slid out of his pockets. Victoria stood up. "Please sit down." Margaret Saturday. And from that moment forward, she never controlled another conversation. Victoria opened a file. At midnight, a fraudulent healthcare power of attorney was presented to this hospital. Margaret immediately protested. "That's ridiculous." Victoria didn't even look at her. "The document has already been challenged in court." She opened another folder. Additionally, police reports for forgery, fraud, and conspiracy were filed at 6:38 this morning. Ethan visibly paled. Olivia gripped the couch. Then Victoria delivered another blow. A temporary restraining order has already been granted. She checked her watch. "It's currently active." Margaret looked at Ethan. "Say something." He couldn't. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked afraid. Margaret quickly changed strategies. She softened her voice. I interrupted her. "I have baseline blood work." The entire room froze. I continued. "And a toxicology panel is running right now." Margaret's composure cracked. "You don't know what you're saying." I looked directly at her. "I've known for 6 weeks." Silence. Then Olivia broke. She stood up, shaking. I didn't know what it was. Margaret snapped. "Sit down." But Olivia kept talking. "She said it would only make you sleepy. I didn't know you get this sick." Margaret closed her eyes. For the first time, she looked old. Very old. Very tired. And very scared. Then Victoria spoke again. "Miss Carter, you've admitted participation in a criminal conspiracy." Olivia sat down immediately. Then Ethan tried. I looked at him. He lowered his eyes. Because there was nothing left to say. No excuse. No explanation. No justification. Then Margaret stood. The queen of her kingdom. One final performance. I looked at her quietly. Then I spoke the words that ended everything. "Family doesn't poison family, Margaret." The room went completely silent. And for the first time in 30 years, Margaret Carter had absolutely nothing to say. The room stayed silent after I said those words. "Family doesn't poison family, Margaret." No one moved. No one spoke. Even the monitor beside my bed seemed louder now. Beep. 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 Margaret stared at me. For years, she had controlled every conversation. She always had an answer. Always had a smile. Always had a way to turn herself into the victim. But not today. Today, there was evidence. Today, there were witnesses. Today, her performance was over. Victoria closed her folder. Mrs. Carter, I strongly recommend retaining independent legal counsel immediately. Margaret opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Olivia sat on the couch wiping tears from her face. Ethan stood near the window looking completely lost. Then hospital security appeared. 2 officers from the police department arrived a few minutes later. Victoria met them outside before bringing them into the room. She handed them everything. The forged documents. The screenshots. The hospital admission records. My written timeline. The evidence package was thick. Years of manipulation had become a stack of paper. I gave my statement calmly. Years of healthcare training helped me. Facts. Timelines. Specific details. No emotions. No exaggeration. One officer looked at me. Do you wish to press charges? I answered immediately. Yes. There wasn't any hesitation. This was no longer about forgiveness. It was about accountability. Around 10 that morning, the attending physician entered my room carrying a chart. His expression was serious. Claire, we have preliminary toxicology results. The room became silent again. He continued. My chest tightened. Even though I expected it, hearing it out loud felt different. Real. He continued. The amount is consistent with oral ingestion approximately 8 to 12 hours before your blood was drawn. The officers exchanged glances. The physician closed the chart. We'll finalize the report and send copies to investigators. He left quietly. Margaret was no longer in the room. Neither was Olivia. Hospital security had escorted them out nearly an hour earlier. Victoria looked at me. No. She understood immediately. This wasn't over. The following day, Margaret Carter was arrested. Multiple charges followed. Administering a harmful substance. Forgery. Fraud. Conspiracy. Attempted financial exploitation. The woman who controlled everyone for 30 years was suddenly answering questions in an interrogation room. Olivia cooperated almost immediately. She accepted responsibility. She testified. Her sentence was reduced. Community service. Mandatory restitution. Ethan cooperated too. He admitted the unauthorized transfers. He admitted signing documents he shouldn't have signed. He admitted allowing his mother to influence every financial decision throughout our marriage. His criminal penalties were reduced. But his life would never be the same. I filed for divorce the same week I left the hospital. I kept everything. My business. My house. My accounts. My future. Nothing ever entered the Carter family trust. Nothing ever belonged to them. Margaret's empire collapsed shortly afterward. The house was sold. Properties were liquidated. Debts consumed everything. The family that once said a family shares everything ended up losing everything themselves. 6 months later, life looked different. Better. Peaceful. Bennett Home Care expanded again. We added more employees, more patients, more counties. Every Saturday morning, I still visited patients myself. That part of me never changed. I planted tomatoes in my garden. I drank coffee with Hannah on my porch every weekend. Victoria even sent me a handwritten card. It said, "It was a privilege protecting someone who trusted the process." One Sunday, I drove to my mother's house. We sat quietly on the porch. The air smelled like fresh grass and pine trees. After a while, she smiled. "You were always the quiet one." I smiled back. The quiet ones usually notice everything. She nodded. And she was right. Because silence isn't weakness. Silence is observation. And observation is protection. I wasn't harder after everything that happened. I wasn't colder either. Clearer about what deserved my trust. And very clear about what deserved boundaries. The biggest lesson I learned was simple. Trust should never replace verification. Love should never replace common sense. One forged signature. One dinner invitation. One text message. That was all it took to change my life forever. Today, I still believe in kindness. I still believe in love. But now I believe something else too. Your peace is an asset. Protect it. Your health is an asset. Protect it. Your future is an asset. Protect it. Because nobody will guard your life more carefully than you will.